Hi, my name is John Cooksey, and welcome to our video on the Z1U and FX1 HD Sony camcorders. We're going to take you through step by step through all the features and functions with my friend Zach and Bob. We're going to explain all the different things that this camera can do and then some. So without further ado, let's get right to the cameras.
Let's talk about all the controls and functions on the side of this camera. Starting on the left, we have the neutral density filter control that has an off position, 1, and 2 for really strong light conditions. The camera will actually suggest one of these that's appropriate for your lighting conditions or none at all. If we go to the bottom here, we have this nice stainless knob, which is the manual iris adjustment. You can press the iris button. You'll see the f-stops in the viewfinder and adjust this for making more or less light come into the sensors. Just to the right of it here is the gain adjustment. These are presettable gain boost settings which are in your menu system. You can set them to 3, 6, 9, 12, and 18 dB. You'd hit the gain button and then go ahead and push this to the preset gain setting that you set in your menus. Next to it is the white balance control, and it has preset and A and B. Preset being outdoor or indoor, and also the phase or tint adjustable in your menu system. The A and B situation here is that you can set two different presets in the A and B memories, and these are accessed by hitting the white balance button, then zooming in on a piece of white paper or other white surface, holding in the white balance for about 4 or 5 seconds till it stops blinking in the viewfinder, and that preset is then in the A position. Go to the B position, do the same thing. White balance button, hold this in for a few seconds. You can set your indoor white balance, outdoor white balance, have some custom presets that'll stay there even when power is removed from the camera. Going up from there, we have the focus control, auto, manual, and in a spring-loaded position, infinity. Auto is of course continuous autofocus. Manual will allow you to use the lens control manually. And then at any given time, you could push down the spring-loaded position and the lens will focus out to the infinity position. Also, if you're in manual and you wanted to use the autofocus just for a few seconds to see if that might give you a tighter focus, you could hold in the push auto for a few seconds, and as soon as you let go, you'd be back in the manual position. Here we have the assignable buttons, 1 through 3, and these are assignable to 8 different functions inside of the camera. Above these, you've got 3 that are dedicated up here. Record review for seeing the last few seconds of video that you've shot. Very convenient. The backlight for situations where the sun's going down and you've got a strong light and your prime subject is a little bit dark. It'll bump up the gain a little bit and make them quite viewable. And the spotlight, which is good for theaters and things like this where you have one person with a bright spotlight on them and you want to expose that correctly. Let's go down to the bottom right here. We've talked about the iris adjustment and the gain adjustment. We have shutter speed here, and that's adjustable to anything from 1/30th of a second up to 10,000th of a second for capturing really fast action, adjustable via the menus. And the white balance we also talked about in conjunction with setting your A/B presets. At the bottom right here is the auto lock position on this switch here, and that means the camera's full auto, takes care of everything for you, and you really don't have any control of a lot of the fine details. The middle position is the, I would say, normal position. That allows you all of the control that we've talked about. And at any time you might want to hand the camera off to somebody, you can go ahead and throw it into the hold position, and all of the nice settings that you've set up will be frozen so that you can just hand it to somebody and they can do zooming and panning and things like that, but not adjust the camera in any way. And of course, this is where you load the tape. Quick release up here, the door opens up, put shape in there. So that's the side of the camera. Now we're going to look at the back of the camera. On the very back of the camera are some of the audio controls right here. Let's take a look from the back here. This cover opens up, so it gives you access here to the auto and manual switch, auto gain or AGC for the audio, or the manual position where you have a rotary control right here. Here's your zebra and peaking control for the viewfinder, where you can add zebra to your viewfinder so you can see if you're blowing the whites or if you've got too much gain going on. That is also custom presettable via the menus. And peaking, which sort of increases the contrast lines around the edge of the elements in the picture and allows it to be more easily focused. Here's your picture profile button. When we push that, it brings up a menu with 6 picture profiles or presets for the entire way that the camera is shooting. You can set it up for full black and white, for any of the different types of modes and controls that the camera might have. You can set up 6 quick picture profiles for your cineframe looking or any kind of customs you want to do in there. Here's the menu access button that brings up the menus on the viewfinder, and your personal menu, which allows you to program up to 28 of the camera's functions into a real quick menu that you can bring up, customize that at any time. If you want to put over 28 in there, it's not possible. You'll have to bump something that's less important to put something more important in. And also, the status check button here is over here. Gives you the status of all your shooting conditions on the viewfinder real quick, so you can see that it is where you want it to be. Here's the select push exec button down here that allows you to navigate the menus up and down, and then when you push it in, it selects that menu item here. Here also in the back is the charging jack, where you connect to the AC adapter, which charges the battery on the camera itself. The menuing systems on both of these cameras are very similar. When you bring up the menu by pressing the menu button on the back of the camera, the select push exec roller wheel is then accessed to go through the major segments of the menu itself. It comes up on end. First one would be camera set, audio set, second. Third, LCD and viewfinder setup. Fourth, in, out, and record. Fifth, the others category. The first menu is the camera set menu, and the first selection is white balance preset. By pushing the select exec button, you can select between outdoor and indoor for your first white balance preset. That's on the side of the camera, the downmost position. Also, in special conditions, you can shift either one of the outdoor or indoor settings from -7 to +7 towards more reddish up to more bluish. The second one is the auto exposure response selection, and this gives you 3 selections: fast, middle, and slow. This is how quickly the auto exposure in the camera responds to changing light conditions and exposure conditions. Next is gain setup. On the side of the camera, there's 3 positions for the gain switch, and you can independently select how much gain you want on each one of these switches. If you press this, you can see that you've got from 0 to +18 dB. So in the high position on the gain setup switch now, that'll be +18 dB. This is the standard default setting, 0, 9, and 18. Next is shot transition, which we're going to go into more detail with later. But your transition time, which is the duration, and the type of curve that the transition takes are adjustable from this shot transition menu. Steady shot, the default is on here. You can turn that off when you're on a tripod and not needing to handhold the camera. The stabilizer can be turned off. We're going to leave it on. And the steady shot type. You've got a couple of different selections here. Of course, standard is default, but you've got a couple more here to choose from, and it's the way that the response of the steady shot mechanism actually works. We're going to leave it on standard. Flicker reduce. The selections are on and off, and this is to reduce flicker when you're shooting under fluorescent lights or have a TV glowing in the background. It does aid in cutting the flicker a little bit. The handle zoom selection. You've got 2 different speed controls on the low and high speed detent positions for the handle mounted zoom knob. And on the top of the handle, you'll notice there is a little rocker for the telephoto to wide angle zoom control, and there is a record start button and lock switch. And here you can adjust the actual speed of the 2 speed positions of the handle mounted zoom control. Here's the zebra level. This is when you have zebra turned on, adjusting what light level, or white level actually, that you'll start to see the zebra in the viewfinder. Of course, zebra is not recorded onto tape. It's to show you when you're going to start overblowing in the whites in the picture. And normally you might set that to between 70 and 100%. We're going to leave it at 100. On the prosumer version of this camera, the center marker is the only option, and you can turn that on or off, and it puts an X right in the center of the screen. The professional version of the camera has 3 different choices there, and we'll show you those in a moment.
Let's take a look at the manual iris controls on the camera. To use a manual iris control, first come over here to the auto lock and put it in the central position on the switch. Then hit the iris button. and then manipulate the knob to change the aperture up or down. It goes from 1.6 all the way to full closed. Now, we've all seen shots that are well composed and lit, and someone with a white t-shirt walks in and the background changes color and everyone's complexion goes bad. That's because the camera on full auto changes the aperture dynamically according to the light needs of the scene. To avoid movement such as that, you can set your aperture with the manual iris control at the beginning of a shot and hold it throughout the duration of your shot. The manual shutter speed is similarly controlled. Again, make sure the switch is in the middle position, then press the shutter speed button, and then rotate it around, and using the select push execute wheel, you can change the manual shutter speed up or down. The camera will still be recording frames at the same rate, but it will use an electronic shutter to cut off the light or open up the light for the frames. As you go below 60, motion in the frame becomes blurred, giving you a softer look. Above 60, motion becomes more stuttered. If you plan to extract frames from footage you've shot with a lot of motion, for example, sports, then increasing your shutter speed will give you a better result at the end. But keep in mind that the higher the shutter speed, the less light is going to reach the CCDs. So you've got to have a highlight situation to use a high shutter speed.
A lot of people out there are wedding videographers or event videographers and need a little extra light boost. Now, of course, you have your gain control with your L, M, and H, which are preset to 0, they're preset to 6, and they're preset to 18. However, when I go out shooting, I like to take my 0 and bring it up to 3 for that kind of a shoot, because you're never really having enough light, and certainly at 3, you're not going to notice the difference. Then I bring the medium up to 12, which gives me that extra medium boost, and sometimes I'll leave it on 12 for a lot of time and then keep the high one at 18 for those desperate situations. Here's an example in regular room light with the 3 different settings. Here's this would be gain at 3, or the L position that I've custom preset. This is the M position, and this would be 12. And now we'll go to the 18 position. If you're a perfectionist, you're not going to be wanting to do weddings and stuff anyway, because you can't bring in a lot of lights. But if you are a perfectionist, I would recommend changing the settings so your L is 0 and maybe your M is 3 and your high is 6. But in those areas, it's not going to be much of a difference because the signal to noise ratio on these cameras is good. Once again, here's 3, here's 12, and here's 18.
The audio set menu on the FX1 or prosumer version is a lot more basic than the HVR-Z1U professional unit. What it's got is the audio mode set to 16-bit here, the windscreen effect where it cuts down on wind noise, of course selection is on and off, and then the mic line in control, which is going to set the sensitivity of the microphone input either to microphone, more sensitive, or line, less sensitive, matching it up to a mixing board output. We're on the audio set menu here using the Z1U camera. If we use the select exec button, go down to the first choice, it's called audio monitor. Go ahead and select it, and you can see there are 4 choices. Using channel 1, channel 2, it'll play the channel 1 and channel 2 audio on the left and right of the headphone respectively. If you go to channel 1 and select it, you can hear that we're just getting one of the sides, or channel 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of course channel 1 plus 2, which would put us back into both of them there, as we're actually recording in mono at the moment. The audio output is also adjustable either at 1 volt or 2 volts, pumps it up a little bit in case you need a little bit more drive. Leave it back in 1 volt. The audio mode here, we're in DV, and in DV you have 2 choices which are not available in HDTV mode, or HDV mode. That is the audio mode being between 32 and 48 kilobits sampling rate. In 32, you can add extra audio later, dubbing audio onto the video that's already been shot. In 48, you cannot. Put that back where it was. Audio lock mode is a technical mode where you can lock the audio to the time code in the video or not have it locked, leave it in unlock mode. The audio limiter is a nice feature on the Z1U. It allows us to put a limiter onto the audio, keep it from overmodulating, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Also, mic noise reduction, which is an exclusive to the Z1U camera. It just helps keep ambient noise down a little bit. Very subtle effect, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll leave it on. Here's mic select. This selects between the XLR connectors or the internal microphone. You can have one or the other. We'll leave it on XLR, which is what we're using right now. On the internal mic set over here, you can turn on a wind noise filter, and you can also adjust the internal mic sensitivity and boost it if you want. And on the bottom is the XLR set menu, which has the most options of any of the selections. First would be the XLR channel select. And this go ahead and lets you either have 1 and 2 channels going into the 2 channels of audio on the tape, or to take one of the channels, the number 1 channel, and link it into both channel 1 and 2 to make a stereo out of mono, basically, which is what we're doing right now. We go 1, you'll see that would just be on the one side of the audio. Let's go ahead and link 1 into channel 1 and 2. XLR automatic gain control is either linked or separate, and here's where you might have 2 different audio sources going into the 1 and 2. Say you've got a music on one and a narrator on the other. You're going to want to have the automatic gain control separated on those 2 inputs. But if the audio source is somewhat similar in nature, you can go ahead and link the automatic gain controls on those. Input 1 level on the microphone right here is dictating whether you're going to take the output of a mixer at a line level output, which is much more voltage, or the lower output of a microphone and put it into your XLR connectors. Right now we're using a microphone. And then we've got an input trim, which is similar to the control at the top of a channel on a mixer board. It allows you to make up for the differences in the amount of voltage or sound coming out of a microphone or mixer board, and it goes up, boosting, and goes down, down, back up. So you can be sure you got a nice punchy signal coming in on that input. And of course, we also have a wind noise cancellation on channel 1 and 2, and here's those same things duplicated for channel 2. And that's it on the XLR set menu. Let's take a look at some of the audio controls on the outside of the camera. Here are the XLR connectors on the front of the Z1U camera. Also, right in front of them are the on and off switches for sending phantom power down the XLR connectors. Some microphones have an internal battery, and some more professional microphones require 48 volts to be sent down the XLR wire to power the microphones up. So this camera can send that voltage to the microphones. And here's the audio controls on the back of the camera. The Z1U has 2 rotary channel volume controls on it. The FX1 just has 1 of them. Right and back are the channel auto and manual gain control switches. When you have this in auto, for AGC control of the audio levels, these rotary dials will be inoperative. The rest of the controls are on the menuing system. On the Z1U, where you've got the XLR connectors, remember that the internal microphones are active or the XLRs are active, and you have to choose which ones you want to be functioning. They won't be functioning at the same time. It's on the audio set menu, and it's called Mic Select. The third menu is the LCD Viewfinder Set menu, and the second 2 of these selections only are available when the camera is running on batteries. When you have it plugged into the AC power adapter, these will not be controllable. The first one, LCD color, is just the saturation of the viewfinder, and the center position is the normal default position. Second is LCD backlight level. Normal, of course, is default, but you can punch it up with bright. Normal will save batteries. And then the viewfinder's backlight level. Normal, of course, being default, and bright. Of course, we can't see that. That's the viewfinder right now, or the eye cup. Remember that adjusting the values of the viewfinder light level has no effect on the recorded picture.
So now that we have the camera powered on and we have a tape in, let's see what we can see. First, we're going to flip open our gorgeous LCD viewfinder with a 16:9 aspect ratio. The nice thing about the swivel on this viewfinder is that no matter where I point the camera, be it very far up or very far down, I can swivel the viewfinder and still get a clear idea of what I'm shooting. Another thing you can do is to swivel the viewfinder 180 degrees around, which point the camera reverses the image, and you can allow the person that you're shooting to see what you're shooting. The controls for the LCD brightness are right here on the top. We've got the LCD bright plus and minus right here, so you can control the brightness of the viewfinder. And then you also have right here a backlight on and off. The amazing thing with these new LCD viewfinders is that you can turn the backlight all the way off and still see the image under high light conditions. It saves you a little bit of power, and some people prefer it, especially if they don't want the distraction of light spilling back from their camera. If you don't like using the LCD viewfinder, you can close it and use the eyepiece viewfinder in here, which doesn't turn on until you close that or flip it 180 degrees. Once you have that, you can look up to it, and this has the advantage of blocking out a lot of ambient light, especially when you use the larger eyepiece. There is one adjustment that can be made on the EVF, and that is the diopter adjustment right here underneath it. It's got a small sliding lever that goes back and forth, and when you're looking into it and move this lever back and forth, the focus of the EVF changes. So simply look into it, slide the lever back until you find one that looks comfortable, and there you go. The perfect focus for your eye strength.
On the FX1 prosumer version, the in-out record menu has fewer selections. We'll cover the other one a little bit later. The first is the record format, and here you can choose your HDV format at 1080i or your DV format. When the DV format's enabled, then you can go down to record mode here and select your standard play or long playing modes in DV. On the professional version, you'd be selecting between DV and DV cam. The component selection here chooses the output of the component output of the camera with a special connector supplied, so that when you're connecting it to your television, if it's a 480i TV, you can select this, or if it can display 1080, you can select this. The iLink conversion here has on or off, and iLink and FireWire and IEEE 1394 are all the same thing. Either you're going to put out whatever you recorded out of that FireWire connector, or if you want it to convert the high definition stuff you shot down to DV, you can turn this iLink convert to the on position. Last is TV type, and this here will be adjusted according to what type of TV screen you have when you play it back, the 16:9 or 4:3. Thus, it will show high definition content in a letterbox in 4:3, and it will show high definition content perfectly full screen in 16:9 with this selection. But it just needs to be set to the type of television that you're going to play back the signal on. The Z1U version of this camera can be used as an AV-DV converter, and that means when you go into the in-out record menu and go down to AV-DV out and turn it on, any of the analog signals coming into the camera will be put out of the IEEE 1394 FireWire connector, so you can use it as a standalone analog to digital converter.
Here we are with Carrie on the set, and we're going to use her as our model while we set up the picture profile menu system. Now in this camera, picture profile is accessed by hitting picture profile button on the back of the camera. Picture profiles are ideal for setting up a bunch of parameters and having them preset, so while you're at the job you can call them up instantly. So for example, if you are doing weddings or sports, or you want a different kind of film or movie look, you can have those preset up. For PP1, we're going to set up, say, for a 16mm or older kind of movie look. So I'm going to hit the select button in the back, go to settings, and now we need to set it up. Well, color level, let's make a little bit more rich because the older movies had more of a saturation, and they were a little bit more red, so we'll change the color phase down. The sharpness we're going to lower because the older movies didn't have much detail there. The skin tone detail type we'll leave on type 2, and the skin tone level let's put on high. What the skin tone does is gives you a more pleasing, more even skin tone look. And by having it on high, you're going to get the most amount of skin tone correction and evenness, which is really nice. Now, we don't need to play with auto exposure shift, but I want to explain what it is in this situation. If you're outside, for example, videotaping boats on the water all day, you haven't brought your polarizing filter, and what's happening is the background is always coming out a little brighter than the foreground. Go to auto exposure shift, and excuse me, I slipped on the button. Press it in the select button, and in this case we'll go to +3. So it'll always be brighter with your foreground if your background has been continually too bright. Now in this particular case, let me go below and make it a little darker, because film by its very nature is usually a little bit darker than video, and I might have overdone it there, so to be safe, let me go back up. The automatic gain control limit is used to set a top value for the automatic gain control, also known as AGC. In the auto lock mode, the AGC will boost the video gain, so in low light it'll brighten your picture. Now this setting is going to limit how much gain the AGC can use. In the off position, the camera can use up to 18 decibels of gain boost, which will make a very dark picture visible. However, the downside is that graininess can appear in the video, as well as a reduction in contrast, and the blacks can tend to look a little bit more gray. At the 12 dB gain boost, the picture will be improved, but the gain artifacts will be a little less visible, especially if the scene is low contrast to begin with. At the 6 dB gain boost, the artifacts will be negligible, but of course it may not be enough gain boost to rescue the darker scenes. The automatic gain control limit setting only works in the auto lock mode, so when you go to use the HML gain switch, it will override the AGC limit set here. The AT iris limit just sets how high you want the iris to go at a maximum. Now remember, with iris, which is that hole that lets the light in to your pickup, the higher the iris number, the smaller the hole. So if you're at f4, that is a big hole, which gives you less depth of field. Depth of field is the distance between your foreground object and your faraway object. So with older films, or any film compared to video, you have less depth of field. If we want to simulate less depth of field in an iris, automatic iris situation, we would be at f4. So we'll go with that. The auto white balance shift is really not necessary unless you decide that you want to go more reddish or more bluish all the time if you're creating some film where you want a very unique look. I'm not going to use it at all because I like the auto white balance as it is, and I don't want to shift it. In the auto tracing white sensitivity is almost like the automatic gain control 6 and 12 dB. You can decide how sensitive your white balance pickup is. So if you want things to be a little bit more quirky and not always perfect, the middle is the way to go. Your colors may look a little slightly different as you move indoors and outdoors, but that's the chance you take with the sensitivity. If you don't want that chance and you want everything perfect, go to high. We'll play with it in middle and see what it looks like. The black stretch gives you more detail in the black areas in the on position. I'm leaving it off because older kind of movies didn't have a lot of detail in the black area. The Cinetone gamma is the curve of your color and brightness level from low to high, and it simulates more of a film look if you go to type 1. Type 2 is a little bit richer of a look, but in this particular case, the black goes a little bit more darker. I'm going to use type 1. This is a matter of personal preference based on looking at what you see on the screen. If you're doing outside things, the type 2 might be actually a little bit better, but we're indoors, so we'll do this. The Cineframe, Carrie, I would like you to wave your hand, please. Now, just wave it back and forth, sort of like a Prince Charles kind of thing. Great. Now, there's 30 frames a second. There you go. And there's 24 frames a second, and then there's off. You see the difference. So we're getting more of that film look at 24 frames a second. There's debate as to whether it's actually really 24 frames a second or not. Sony says it gives the atmosphere 24 frames a second. It's my personal opinion that it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck. It is a duck. It looks exactly like all the other 24 frame a second cameras, and it gives you that film look. This is the most important thing that you need to give the film the look of film on your camera, is the Cineframe 24. Now, copy allows you to take all this, and let's suppose we wanted to modify it a little and save it as another picture profile menu item. All you do is copy, and it gives you choices because we're in PP1. Where do you want to copy it to? Well, let's copy it to number 2. Why do we want to copy it again? I'm going to hit yes. We want to copy it again because we just may want to do something slightly different in another picture profile. So now I'm in picture profile 2, and if I look at the settings, they're the same as what we had in number 1. However, say for example, we want a different color phase, and we really don't want the level up, but we want it down. We wanted more of a faded film look. Not as rich, still not as sharp, and let's say we don't care about the auto exposure shift. We want it a little brighter. So instantly I've created another profile which is very, very similar, but not had to go through a lot of hard work to get there. Now, if you go down to the bottom, you see reset. So if you go through everything and you're like, you know what, I want to come up with a totally different setting for number 2. I don't care about that setting anymore, and I'm going to need that particular profile to come up with a new setting. Then you would just hit reset, and it would bring everything back to the original. I'll go ahead and do it. And there you go. And it brings everything back to sort of a default position. This is the picture profile menu. And remember, when you need to use it, you just hit picture profile. And now, of course, we've saved at least one. And you can bounce through them and see all the different things that you have in there. 1, 2, 3, 1 and 4 seem to have something saved in them now. But this is going to be very handy at the job, and you're going to use that picture profile a lot to come up with different kinds of looks in an instant. You may want to have a very small piece of paper, a little cheat sheet, and tape it to the back of your battery or something to allow you to remember what those are. But keep in mind that you can look through the viewfinder and see the different looks that you have when you're on the job. Bob, tell us about DV wide record with the Z1U Pro.
Well, the Z1U Pro offers a DV wide record mode where it allows you to record in 16:9 in DV mode. That means if you've got a regular 16:9 television, but you want to play back a DV picture full screen, you can go ahead and throw the DV wide record on in the menu.
And the advantage of that is if you want to get the HD looking picture, but you don't want to suck up all the memory when you're editing,
Exactly.
or you want to just...
Lower resolution, but full screen.
Okay, and then the other thing is the down converting functions on the Z1U Pro that the FX1 doesn't have.
This has much more extensive down converting functions. On the FX1, it really just says TV type and allows you to select which TV type you're going to be playing it on. But the Z1U has really extensive down converting capabilities in the menuing situation, and that allows you to select between squeeze, letterbox, and crop. So if you want to convert high definition signals out of all of the composite and component outputs of this thing, you can do that down to DV level, but you'll have to choose between no effect, letterboxing it, cutting off the edges with a crop, or squeezing the picture into the screen.
I see. So more options there. Thank you.
The last menu selection is the Others menu, and on the FX1 prosumer version there are a few less selections than the professional camera. The first one is the Assign Buttons function, and here's where you assign functions to the buttons on the side of the camera over here. Very, very useful. You just go ahead and push it, pick which one you want in there, select again, and you've got Steady Shot assigned to the number 1 button on the side of the camera. Same for buttons 2 and 3. The clock set, here we go here. You know what that is. Do it when you first get the camera. Push it. Go ahead and set everything up there with your times and dates. World time is a function that you can go ahead and set an offset amount of hours from your home time in case you take your camera to another place in the world and you want to quickly shift over to the time in that area. Language, of course, what language you're speaking. English, of course, is the default on this camera, but we have several others available. The beeping here, you can select between a simple beep or a melody beep, or completely off if you want the camera silent when you're pushing buttons. The record lamp on the front of the camera, the red lamp indicating that you are recording, you can turn that off. Be a little bit more inconspicuous when you're rolling tape. People won't be able to tell that you're actually recording. The format lamp are the blue LEDs that are next to the FireWire connector and on the left side of the camera when viewed from the rear that indicate if you're in DV or in HDV mode. The iris style control is either normal or opposite, and that is the nice metal rotating dial that control your iris manually on the left side of the camera. You can select it for pushing it up reduces the f-stops, or pushing it up increases the f-stops. Letter size is the actual size of the font on the menus here. You can see that you can select 2x, make things a little bit easier to read. The default is normal.
The tape remaining setting controls the display of the remaining tape time. The auto setting displays the remaining tape time for about 8 seconds after you turn the camera on with the tape inserted, or after you press play, or the display battery info button. In the on position, the tape time remaining counter is always on.
And then the display output is whether the menuing systems that we're looking at now are output to the LCD panel only, or the video outputs and the panel. And here's the remote control. You can turn it on or off such that the camera will respond to infrared remote control or will not.
Now, I'm sure many of you remember the old days of videography when, in order to get what we would call pre-focus, you would take your zoom all the way in, focus the shot, and pull back. Sony has gone to great lengths to solve all that pain and suffering by putting the expanded focus button right on the side of the camera near the rocker switch. Just hit this. You're now going to get a closer up digital shot, but it works fantastic for pre-focusing, and then release it, and instantly you know that shot is focused without having to zoom in and zoom out, saving you a lot of time. Speaking of zooming in or out, we obviously have two ways to do it on the camera: the side rocker and the rocker on top. Now, most of the time you're going to use the side because it's sort of infinitely variable, and you could zoom in and out slow depending on how much pressure you put on that. But what if you're in a situation where you want to get a shot down below like this and slowly pull back or whatever? This is not going to have the control, this small little knob on top. So to set that, you have your control on the side, which has high and low. Make sure you go into the custom menu and adjust the preset, especially if you're doing event videography or different things, because you're going to want those nice slow zoom ins. So what I do is set the L or the low to 1, the slowest you can have, and the H to about 3, which is really about a medium. Because remember, you don't need something fast to pre-focus. You have your expanded focus, or you have your big rocker arm that you can zoom in really fast if you had to. And so by setting the L and the M on very slow and almost medium slow, you have a really nice control when you're down on the ground and you just want to creep in a little bit. And that, of course, is done through the custom menu function.
In the menus is the timecode and user bit setting menu. We go down to the first selection here. Timecode preset allows you to go ahead and set a time you'd like the timecode to start at by just pressing your select exec button and go ahead and select a time for it to start, or reset it as well. On the second selection, we've got user bits preset, and here you've got an 8-bit hexadecimal preset that you can go ahead and set to anything you'd like to indicate that that scene has a stamp on it. You'll know that the FF1-Z1U scene, whatever you want to put in here, indicates that that scene shot is linked to that hexadecimal code. I'll go ahead and reset it. Timecode format here is in automatic, drop frame, or non-drop frame. Drop frame being where it is compensating by dropping 2 frames every minute to compensate for the fact that the actual frame rate is 29.97 frames and not 30. Drop frame is the way to go, and the default mode on most cameras. Time code run here is in 2 modes. Record run, which means it only runs when you press the record button, or free run. If we click that, the time code will just start out right at that point and continue to free run just like a regular clock. Timecode Make has 2 selections here, Regenerate and Preset. Regenerate is that when you're using backspace editing, when it backs up and hooks up to the last segment shot, the timecode actually restarts at that point, or Preset, which lets it free run. And then the user bit time record actually turns the 8 hexadecimal bits up there into just a free running clock. So you could use those 8 user bits as a real-time clock. And here's the information you're going to see on the screen when you push the battery information button underneath the LCD viewfinder. Right here we've got the indicator of what you're shooting in this case 1080i. Above it is the battery meter that's going to show you a sort of visual indication of what's going on with the battery, as well as the exact amount of time you've got left in the battery. Over my head here is a record and standby indicator, green for standby. Here we have the elapsed time on the tape indicator. Underneath the audio meters, left and right over there, you see we're modulating to about 100%. Right here is the white balance indicator that we're in white balance preset A that we've set up. Here's the shutter speed, in this case 60th of a second. The f-stops that the iris is set in the lens, or the aperture, how open it is. And over here, the manual focus indicator showing that we do not have it on automatic, but we have it on manual, and sometimes it'll show you in meters how far you are from the subject while you're actually focusing. Here's the neutral density indicator that will tell you what, if you see it blinking, that means turn that neutral density filter on. If it's not blinking, that means that neutral density filter is turned on. So it's an intelligent indicator and will tell you whether to use the neutral density filter or not.
Bob, I gotta confess, I still don't understand all the white balance settings on this machine.
Well, they are confusing. These 2 new cameras have sort of streamlined the operation. And once you get the idea, it's really a lot more straightforward. You've got preset A and B on the side of the camera. And presets, what you used to have, the different settings, outdoor, indoor, cloudy, fluorescent, incandescent, they've streamlined that just down to indoor and outdoor via the camera set menu. So you go into camera set.
So I'm going into the menu here.
Yep, you go down to white balance
camera
preset.
set.
Yeah, white balance preset.
Okay, white balance preset. I've got outdoor.
And you can go ahead and select that with your select exec button. Select one of those 2. And
okay, now I've got a little sunshine down in the corner of my LCD screen.
That means outdoor. But you also get to push each one of those preset settings, the indoor and outdoor settings, from -7 to +7. That would be from the reddish range up to the bluish range. So basically, you'd set yourself for indoor and outdoor via the menu on the camera set for that preset. So as soon as you put it to preset, it would be ready to work outdoors, and it might have a little bit of bias towards the red or towards the blue.
Okay, how then do I use these A and B switches?
Well, A and B is giving you 2 presets that you can do a custom white balance in a particular setting. You're inside, you've got some mixed lighting going on, you pull out your white sheet of paper or whatever you have that's really white, go ahead and zoom it in on the camera, set yourself to preset A on the side of the camera, and then go ahead and press the white balance button right under the tape eject. Now, right above the selector button for AB is the white balance button itself. You'd hold that in for about 2 seconds. You'll see the blinking symbol. It'll go out, and you're locked in for the A set presetting on the white balance. Now, you're ready to go on A. If you had another setting, say outdoor, and you're going to go right outside and go do something outdoors, and you want to set that up, you can go out there, set up your white sheet, switch it up to the B setting, press the white balance under the tape drive to activate it, and then go ahead and hit that white balance button while zoomed in on 100% white for about 2-3 seconds. Then you've got that setting pumped into there. And those settings are held when the camera is off or powered off or power is removed completely from the camera. So we'll remember those.
All right, Bob. Well, thanks a lot. Hopefully I can get the setting I need for the shot that makes it look great.
Shouldn't be a problem.
One of the great things about the neutral density is making it even easier to throw the background out of focus, which is certainly nice when you're trying to create that movie-like effect, because if you're dealing with a 35mm camera, the lens structure and the size of the pickup device, 35 millimeter, is such that it's a lot easier to throw the background out of focus. So putting yourself in a cine frame kind of mode and throwing the background out of focus can really give more of a movie-like. So you want to set your neutral density on 2. If this isn't enough, keep in mind that you can shoot at a later part of the day when there's not quite as much light. It'll open the aperture a little bit more. Or you can put an external ND filter up to ND4, ND6, or a combination to really stop down the amount of light. And then the background you should have as far away as possible. This will give a nice out of focus look to your picture and allow it to look a little bit more like film.
Bob, help me understand the difference in the formats. The Pro level camera will record in HDV, DV cam, and mini DV. What do I choose?
Well, both of the cameras will do the HDV format, and they're pretty much identical in that case. The more professional camera, the Z1, can do the HD TV 1080i format. It can as well do the DV cam format and do the mini DV format. Once you enable the DV cam, you have the choice of going DV cam or DV itself. The lesser camera will only do the mini DV format or straight DV format, and will not do the DV cam, but does the high res stuff.
Mm-hmm. And 1080i, what exactly does that describe?
Well, 1080 is of course 1080 lines of resolution interlaced using the old even odd feel interlacing, but as well, in that specification is the thing that we're going to use, MPEG-2, which is the satellite television broadcast standard and is the DVD format standard. So in 2006 and beyond, we'll have maybe the Blu-ray disc or whatever they're going to call it using this compression scheme so that this is perfectly compatible with that.
So say I'm recording to record output onto a DVD. What would be my best format to use?
Well, either format can be used, but as it stands today, you're going to land up down converting, as of this year, down into the standard DVD format, which is going to limit you to 500 lines of resolution or less. So this camera can output, down convert in any direction you'd like, letterbox it, take it in any direction you'd like, out of the FireWire connector or out of the composite or baseband video connectors via the menu selections. So you've got everything in what I call a transition area camera. Both of these cameras are in that transition area from high def, from the low def to high def.
So if I want to, I can record 1080i using my 16:9 aspect ratio. And then as I record it down to, say, display on the TV I have, I can either letterbox it, I can chop it off, or something like that.
Correct. You can squeeze it, letterbox it. You can just have it cut the edges off by cropping the edges off. And all of those are available from this camera. So just about any option you want to do is available via the custom menu functions on this camera.
All right, Bob, thanks for clearing that up.
No problem. All right, we're going to talk about some of the neat features here. The old lens cap is gone for both of these cameras. It's got a small switch on the side which you push up or down for close, up for open, and the whole thing is integrated right into the lens hood over here. The lens hood itself does come off with a knurled thumb screw over here, rotates and pulls off for easy application of your filters. Got a little star filter on here. Take it on. Be careful of your threads when you're putting it on. And there you go. You probably won't cross-thread it, and bingo. You can put that back on if you like. Now, another thing that's sort of interesting is that on the top of the handle itself, they've given you an extra record button. It's actually lockable. You can start recording, so if you can't get your hand to the other record button, and you've got it in standby, you can always hit the one on top. If you're doing low recording, or if you've got the camera near the ground, very useful. The other thing is that they've also remoted the zoom lever up here. Now, it doesn't have complete linear control like you do on the normal zoom lever from slow to fast, but it does have a two-position click control on the left side of the handle over here, which has high and low on it. And both of these are settable via the menu system. So you can set yourself a nice slow one and one that's sort of medium. Usually the slower speeds are much more effective. So you might set it on 1 and 3 for the low and high settings. And then you just rock your zoom control on the top here to control the lens. Here's a little pro tip. Most professionals will go ahead and use the bars in the beginning of a fresh tape. And the bars button is right on the top of the, under the viewfinder here when you pick it up. You press it once, and you're going to be able to bring up color bars on the screen right there. And on the Z1U, there are two different kind of color bars available. But roll about 30 seconds of this in the beginning. It's also good to get past the beginning of the tape itself, as if there are any problems with tape, it's usually right at the very beginning of the tape stock itself. All right, here's two interesting features that both of these cameras have, and that number one is the end search, and that is when you're in playback mode and you press the end search button, it will go back to the exact end of the last piece of video and cue it up ready to go, so there's no bump whatsoever when you hit the record button again. Now, the strange thing about this is we noticed that this feature did not work at all a couple of times, and we finally figured out that really you have to have a completely uninterrupted time code from the beginning of the tape to wherever you're searching from, otherwise the function just doesn't come up. Here's another great feature on both of these cameras. Right under the electronic viewfinder is the display battery info button, and even with the camera turned off completely, if you hold this in for a few seconds, it brings up a really nice informational screen about the battery's condition and how long you've got left in record time. When you're using the camera as a VCR and using the playback controls underneath the LCD panel on top, you have the standard stuff: stop, pause, play, fast forward, and rewind. But this camera is sort of interesting in that when you do press the fast forward and rewind, it pixelates the picture, and you can't see what's going on, as you can see, but it does get slightly pixelated, and you can see that in the playback. I'll hit the rewind button, stop, and then rewind. Same type of effect. And also, there's a slow button, so when you're in play mode and you hit slow, it goes to a real slow creep, but definitely keeps the video's integrity. On video cameras, and these included, condensation is really a concern. When you're transporting a camera from one environmental condition to a radically different one, temperature-wise, you can get condensation inside of the camera. And all of these Sony cameras will tell you with a blinking flash in the screen that the camera is not going to function because of condensation in the transport unit. It's very important to open the transport door, let things dry out, be patient, wait a while, and just give it about an hour. Let it dry out before you put a tape in and retry it again. When it's ready to go, it'll tell you. This is a subjective observation, but I found that using one type of tape stock continuously ends up in the best overall results. There are two different types of tape lubrications, a dry and a wet lubrication on the DV tape stock, and it's best to pick one brand of tape and stick with it. It's really important to keep your heads clean on video cameras such as these, and provided with both of these cameras is a head cleaning cassette. It's really easy to use. I would say suggested use is one every 10 hours, but you can go for a hair more than that, and if you're going to have any dirt in the heads, you're going to start seeing it pretty drastic results. So, open the transport, put the tape in, gentle motion when you push this in, remember, be patient, give it 10 seconds, close the door, and in VCR mode, press play and count to 10. No more than that. If it doesn't clean the heads and there's still noise, give it another 10 seconds. If it takes more than 3 cleanings, it's going to go back to the dealership.
I hope you learned a lot on video number 1. Now it's time to put in video number 2 and learn more about this HD camcorder.